Hi everyone, it's Melissa, and today I am doing the I Want to Believe tag. I saw Brian at Bookish do this tag recently, and as a huge fan of the X-Files, I knew I needed to do this. I will also link down below the original tag. The channel's name is Rajathon, I think. This is a new channel to me. So this tag basically has a prompt of like a different episode of the X-Files, and then there's a question related to books. I haven't prepared my answers, so we're gonna do this on the cuff, off the cuff. How does that saying go? I don't know anymore. Anyway, so prompt one is pilot, a great beginning to a series or trilogy. Okay, so I feel like I keep mentioning the same series, like book series on my channel over and over and over again, so I'm gonna go with something different. Something I read recently in March was The City of Ember by Jeanne DuPrau, and this is a middle grade dystopian following the citizens of a city called Ember, and the world is completely dark. The city is run with lights and huge generators, but the generators are starting to fail. They are starting to get power outages, and these outages are becoming more frequent and longer. And the story follows two kids, I think, who are about 12 years old, and they are trying to find a way basically to save Ember. One of them, he gets a job in the pipe works, working on the generator, and he wants to try to figure out how to fix it. Whereas the other character, even though everyone in this town has been taught that Ember is the only light in a dark world, she is convinced that that's not true and that there are other places out there in the world, and she's trying to figure out a way to help the citizens escape Ember. Prompt 2 is Squeeze. That's a good episode. Tombs was my favorite monster in the series. What is your favorite monster in a book? Okay, so I read horror, and I don't read a lot of books with monsters in them. I'm going to go with another middle grade book, and I'm going to say that my favorite monster is the other mother from Coraline. So if you're not familiar, this is like one of my favorite books. Coraline follows a young girl. Her family has just moved in to this old house, and she discovers a secret door, and one day she is able to open this door and discover a portal to like another world. This world on the surface is so much better than her own world. Her parents make the food that she wants to eat, and the people in that world are much more bright and colorful and lively and interesting than the boring adults in her own world, and everything is just more fun and catered to her. But as you can imagine, this is a bit of a facade, and you slowly start to realize that that Coraline's other mother in this universe is not what she seems, and that maybe her attempts to get Coraline to stay in this world with her are a little nefarious. The next prompt is the Erlenmeyer flask, the one where they find a baby alien. I don't remember this episode very well. It's been a while. I need to rewatch the X-Files. What is the best sci-fi you have ever read? That's hard. I do enjoy science fiction. There are some good ones out there. I think the first thing that kind of pops into my mind, and I know this is going to be totally cliche, but I really do think it's probably the best sci-fi I've read, and that is Dune by Frank Herbert. There's just a lot of really rich world building in terms of like climate and religion and like political system, and it's just a very well lived in world. If you're not familiar with Dune, it's been a while, but in a nutshell, it follows like, I don't know what you would call this, but it's almost like medieval like nobility is how this like system is set up. So you have different like houses, and our main character Paul, his father, that house is asked to take over the control or like the stewardship of this planet called Arrakis, and this planet is the only place in the universe where they can mine something called the spice, and the spice, it like enhances things. I can't remember everything about it, but it's also okay. The spice is also the only way that they can travel like interstellarly or intergalactically, so it's important for space travel. Anyway, so it's a very important planet, and but they're pretty sure that Paul's father has been kind of set up politically by taking over this planet. Anyway, it all kind of devolves from there, but that's the basic setup. I won't say too much more, but it just is really, if you're looking for like a lot of really great world building and a world that feels like it's really been fleshed out, then this is definitely the science fiction to go for. So prompt 4 is Clyde Breckman's Final Repose. This is the only episode that won an Emmy. No kidding, it's great. What is your favorite book? That's such a hard question to answer because, and I think a lot of people maybe feel the same way that I do, but I will give you a different answer depending on like what week or month you ask me this question. I would say I have like a group of favorites, but pinning down one absolute favorite, it like depends on my mood. I might go with a book that I've probably reread the most and go back to constantly for comfort, and that is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. This just has everything I love. It has adventure, and it has an underdog story, and it has, well, it's a fantasy book, which I love. So yeah, The Hobbit is just a wonderful, wonderful book. So prompt number 5 is Jose Chung's From Outer Space, a funny abduction episode. This is actually my all-time favorite episode of the X-Files. What is the funniest book you have read? Okay, so I've mentioned this book many times, but I'm not gonna lie and substitute this with another book because the funniest book I've ever read is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. It's no context. I think this is probably the only book I have ever laughed out loud while reading. It's just phenomenal. I've talked about it a lot, so I won't give like a whole thing, but it's basically about a kind of like everyman who gets whisked off onto a space adventure after Earth is destroyed by bureaucrats who are making the way for like a intergalactic highway. That starts off the story. It goes from there. Lots of funny characters. Just read it. It's so, so good. Prompt number 6 is Home. This episode was very disturbing and was never re-aired on TV. Which, okay, an aside for all my like X-Files fans, like, yes, that episode was disturbing, but I felt like they had way more disturbing crap on that show, but maybe that's just me. Spoiler alert, there was incest. Okay. What is the most disturbing thing you have ever read? The most disturbing. I think the most disturbing thing I've read, like, in recent memory is the book of Night Women by Marlon James. This book was phenomenal. It's a coming-of-age story who follows a woman who is enslaved, a Black woman who is enslaved on a plantation in Jamaica. And this book is just horrific. It depicts so many things so graphically, and it is very, very disturbing. Yeah, nothing else really pops into my mind as being more disturbing than that. And I've read some weird crap, but that, don't let that turn you off of it. It's so good, but it is not a light, fun read. Okay, prompt 6 is Postmodern Prometheus. This is a black and white Frankenstein style episode. I really like, this is one of those underrated episodes, I think, too. Like, not really many people remember this one, but it's good. What is your favorite classic book? I'm quite underread in my classics, so I don't have like a huge like back catalog to pull from. I think I'll probably go with a modern classic and say The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. That book like changed how I think, and I think that's like the mark of just like a really fabulous book. If you're not familiar, It's set in was it the 20s or early 30s? It was set during the American Dust Bowl, so this was a drought that happened where I don't even know how many thousands, millions of people were displaced. And it follows a family of farmers who basically abandoned their home and their farmland, as many people did at the time, to travel to California where there were better opportunities. This book is depressing as hell, but one of my favorites of all time. Prompt 8 is Bad Blood. He chose some great episodes. In this episode, Mulder kills a vampire, or he thinks he does, and then tells the story all in flashbacks. What is your favorite way a story, or I read that wrong. What is your favorite, I think this is just written wrong, sorry. What is your favorite way a book has used flashbacks to tell a story? I think that's what it's supposed to say. Okay, so, well, I don't know if this was really flashbacks. It's definitely like non-linear. But that is Catch-22 by, oh my god, Joseph Heller, I think, yes. This is like a World War II novel. It's non-linear. It is incredibly hard to follow, or at least it was for me. Yeah, but it's like one of those ones that like stick with it. It's really, it's worth it. Yeah, that book was just kind of all over the place and confused me, but I didn't care because it was so good. But yeah, like the way that the story kind of like jumps around and gets you bits and pieces, and you kind of like don't ever know where you are when you start a chapter, like where you are chronologically. Anyway, yeah, my brain was a hot mess reading that book, but yeah, I can't really give you a better synopsis than that because that book is just is weird. It's good. It's weird. Prompt 9 is Drive. A man jumps into Mulder's car and they speed through the entire episode. Oh, this was an episode that really grossed me out because I won't give it away. Something happens and blah, blah. Okay, what book have you read that is a non-stop ride? Digging in the far recesses to think about thrillers. Or maybe actually this is more of a dystopian, but The Long Walk by Stephen King. This is one where it's just kind of like nonstop. I wouldn't call it like super fast paced. This is very character driven book, but it just does feel like it's just non-stopping. And that has to do with the fact that, so the premise, sorry, I'm scattered. The premise of this book is, and I don't think I'm giving much away because you learn this in the first chapter, but it's a dystopian society where they have this like competition called The Long Walk every year, and a bunch of young men, kind of like teenage, early 20s, compete to win this prize of like basically you're set for life. I think you get like house and money and just like all your needs taken care of. So 100 people compete every year, and during the long walk you have to keep walking and you can't stop. If you go below a certain like miles per hour, like you have to keep up a certain pace, and if you don't, you are given a warning. After I think your third warning, you are issued your ticket. And I think in a Stephen King dystopian, you can probably imagine what that ticket is. Yeah, so one person makes it to the end, and I wouldn't call it necessarily a thriller. It's very much like a horror dystopian, but it does kind of have that nonstop feel because they are just like walking continuously for days. Okay, prompt number 10 is Milagro. In this episode, sorry, I can't read. A book becomes reality when the author writes it. I don't remember this episode. What is a book setting you would never want to go to? Well, the previous one. Actually, for this one, I will say Life Pie, by Yann Martel, I think is the author's name. I can't quite remember. It's been a hot minute since I read this, but the premise for this book is there's a shipwreck, and this young boy, adolescent, is the only survivor on this life raft, and the ship that he was on had like I don't know, I think his like father owned a zoo or something and they were like shipping animals. Anyway, he gets onto a life raft, but so does like a zebra, an orangutan, and a tiger. So the reason why this is like where I would not, a book that I would not want to be in, was like, well, clearly marooned on a life raft with a tiger, duh. But also, I have like a deep-seated fear of like the depth of the ocean, or like I have a fear of being marooned. So like marooned on the ocean, or like marooned in space. Like it's just like even just thinking about it now, it gives me like goosebumps and makes me feel very uneasy. So the thought of not only being like alone and trying to survive with this tiger, but also just like in the middle of the vast expanse of ocean. Ugh, no thanks. And there's a bonus question. I hope the Smoking Man is in this one. What is your favorite side character in a book? Side character. Oh, I don't even have to think about this. Samwise Gamgee, Lord of the Rings, the true hero of the story. Yes, all the way. One of my favorite. I don't even want to call him a sidekick because that, I don't know. Lord of the Rings to me is more of like an ensemble, but like if you're gonna break it down, Frodo really is like the main protagonist, and Samwise in that case would be kind of like a side character, but he's like the best. I mean, where would we be without Samwise Gamgee? That was the I Want to Believe tag. Thank you for putting up with my wild rambling, because I had basically no notes for this video and for my tangents, basically fangirling over the X-Files. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching this. If you've done this tag, please let me know. I'd like to go watch it. Or if you are an X-Files fan, please comment below your favorite episode. Mine is Jose Chung's From Outer Space. My second favorite is Pusher. Let me know which are your favorites. I would love to fangirl along with you. Okay, so thanks again for watching. I hope everyone's doing well, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.